senior center on scams and helping the elderly protect themselves from becoming victims, and we talk about other things that involve the police department. I could do that all day long, and no problem. I wouldn't even be nervous. Maybe a tiny bit, because still I'm standing in front of people. But this is the first time that I've had to talk about myself and about what I do. See, I'm already started. This is gonna be awful for me. You guys will be fine. If not, there are cloth napkins on your table. I may need one. So I was surprised when I was asked to do this, but really honored to be in front of all of you women and to talk about this event for me, which has been a true journey. So I'm going to try to get through my note cards I wrote so that way I could get it all. I have a tendency to ramble, and we're on a time constraint. So I'm going to park this microphone. I apologize if it clanks, and if you can't hear me, somebody signal and I'll adjust accordingly. Hopefully. Okay, how about right here? Is that good? Music goes down. I'm going to need my daughter to hold this microphone for me the whole time. Just kidding. I'll just stand like this. Okay. I don't want you to do that. Your arm will be tired. Okay. These are technical difficulties. We'll get through them. Okay. Now I'll just lean over here. All right. I could use my cop voice, but I don't want anybody to get scared. Or as Hallie would contest to, my mom voice. Okay, so my name is Natasha Ward. I've been in the Andover Police Department since May 2013, and I've been in investigations since January 2015. I'm married to my best friend, Mike, and we have spent 16 wonderfully beautiful and stressful years together. There is stress always, but it can also be splendid. We celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary end of May this year. I am the mother of 2 adult children, air quotes, they're still working on it. My son will be 21 tomorrow, and my daughter, who's here with us, is 18, 19 in November. I wish my son were home to celebrate, but he followed a girl out to New Jersey a few years ago, and for some reason, even though that girl did not pan out, he likes the state and is trying to make it home. He has since found a wonderful young lady who I had the pleasure of meeting earlier this summer, and they are doing, like the rest of us, trying to figure it all out. My daughter lives in Wichita, but is currently staying with her father. She lives there with her beloved canine best friend, Hades. We occasionally get to hang out and watch Supernatural, the best show ever made, impromptu photo shoots, and do jigsaw puzzles when we can, between her work schedule and mine. She FaceTimes me to tell me about her, I can't look at you. She FaceTimes me to tell me about her most recent accomplishment or frustration and visits my work when she can. Fortunately, a lot of time and healing has transpired since their father and I divorced, and I can comfortably say he and I have found an understanding most days, which is an incredible blessing. It's hard enough to raise children as a single parent. It is even harder when there is conflict between separated parents. One tiny contribution to the contention between their dad and I is why I'm here today, my career choice. The kid's father did not support my dream and said that it was not right for me. I was a girl, not strong enough, and I couldn't do it. I was asked to speak about being a female police officer and how I traveled my journey to police detective. My story is not extraordinary, but it is unique to me. The road was not always smooth, but most that know me will tell you, I am nothing if I am not very, very stubborn. This is my story. I wanted to be a detective since I was a kid. My childhood was filled with mystery, Scooby-Doo, Nancy Drew, Jessica Fletcher, and of course Sherlock Holmes. I was infatuated with it all, the whodunit, good versus evil, and in most stories, the good guy or gal winning. But what really drove this home was a local case in 1990 of a girl not much younger than me, the disappearance and murder of Nancy Shoemaker. when she was abducted. Her body was later found, and 2 men would be arrested and held responsible. I was a 12-year-old girl watching news reports of the process, and I remember thinking, then, what I wanted to do when I grew up was save the world. My father raised me to be tough, work hard, do for others, and he told me I could do anything any boy could do. He may or may not have also taught me an extensive, colorful vocabulary that I can only assume he learned when he enlisted with the U.S. Navy. I'll keep it clean today. I think my father's encouragement that I was equal to any boy led me to consider many options for my future. He never gave suggestions or pushed ideas. He just said I could do anything they could do. As I was growing up, I knew I wanted to be a mother, and I wanted to help others. To be fair, I wanted to be a spy, but it seemed I wasn't born in the right country, and America did not seem to offer any spy school. I then wanted to be a federal agent. I could probably thank television for this. They make the feds look glamorous, and as if they're the real big kahunas. Really, I just wanted to save the world, and would you believe, it was not until my last year of grad school that I finally realized just how big the world was. I attended junior college right out of high school, but I hadn't found my focus just yet. I dropped out after approximately 1 year of taking college classes. I would not end up going back to college until my youngest was in kindergarten many moons later. At 18, my father would tell me about a job with the Appearance Group, an aircraft cleaning detail company in Wichita, and I would end up meeting the kid's father. We began a relationship leading into young parenthood and marriage. Our relationship was unhealthy, and we would divorce after 5 years of marriage for a myriad of reasons. Namely, we were both quite young when we were married and did not know who we were or what we needed in a spouse, let alone ourselves. I was 19, almost 20 when my son was born, married at 8 months pregnant. My daughter would be born 2.5 years later when I was 22. The divorce would be ugly, and it would take many years for the dust to settle. The winter following my divorce, I would meet my future husband, Mike, in a bar while I was on a terribly awful date with someone else. Mike would introduce himself by offering to play a game of pool and shaking my hand, and as the story goes, it was sparks at first sight. It would be difficult in the beginning. I came with a lot of baggage, but he saw in me a mission and purpose I couldn't see at the time, as I was in an unhealthy place. He was patient and loving and willing to hold me as I healed. He was great with the kids, and his family accepted us as all of their own. I expressed to him my dreams of going to college, and at the time, to be a federal agent. One day, at lunch, without warning, he drove me to WSU and had me enroll. Don't get me upset. I'm holding it together. He encouraged and supported me through the entire process. Bachelor's in Criminal Justice in May 2011, followed by a Master's in the Administration of Criminal Justice in December 2012. I would, while in my bachelor's, apply for the FBI and make it to phase 2 before they had a freeze on hiring. I was given some advice that I was not very competitive because I did not have any experience. I would apply to be a police cadet for WSU and join the Citizens Police Academy, allowing me to learn the ins and outs of Wichita Police Department and the Cedric County Sheriff from a citizen's perspective. Later in my master's, I would apply for the Border Patrol as it was the easiest federal lateral transfer. We drove down to Texas to take the initial test. Not one time did Mike ever discourage me or say I was not capable, or not smart enough, or not right for the job, or that my acceptance of any job would be a hindrance or problematic. He would always say we would work it out together. After graduating with my master's, I would start applying at all police departments hiring. I had previously applied with Wichita PD while still in college, but after much deliberation, I decided I preferred not to work in the community I had spent the last 20 years in. That whole avoid arresting those that you know, or hey, I got a speeding ticket, can you help me with that issue? I saw that Andover was hiring, and I started researching the community, and more importantly, the police department. I applied. I was drawn to Andover Police Department's mission of public service excellence through compassion, integrity, and commitment. And in fact, just a side note, I believe in it so much I have this token, and it's just commitment, and I keep it in my pocket every day. That's all it says on it. But I just keep that in my pocket. So that really drove that home for me, that that was someplace I wanted to be a part of. I was hired and started May 6, 2013. Talk about a deer in a headlight. I did not know what to expect, and all of it was new. College can teach you a lot, but hands-on is where you really learn what this job entails. There's something to be said about having people you can talk to and relate to in stressful experiences or situations. Even seemingly simple tasks like managing a duty belt and gear while using the restroom. It was difficult, but I was a tomboy growing up, raised by my father predominantly, and typically adjust accordingly to most situations as needed. Out of the blue, I would be contacted by the Border Patrol for further testing and a conditional job offer. I never heard anything back from them, and I figured I must have not passed or was not selected. This came at the same time as the opening of an investigation position with the Andover Police Department. I was a new officer on my own for less than a year at this point and still learning every single day. I had no expectations to obtain the detective position due to my green experience, but because it is what I wanted to do since I was young, I gave it my best shot. I went up against several very qualified officers for the position, all males. For a long time, I've doubted myself because of my limited job-related experience. These other guys came from military, security, corrections, or had been doing the job much longer than me. I'd been a waitress, admin assistant, nursing home aide, call center associate, and graduate teacher's assistant. How could these normal civilian jobs help me as a police officer? I was also a volunteer victim advocate with the Wichita Area Sexual Assault Center, a police cadet at WSU, and volunteered some time with the DUI Victim Center of Wichita. There have been countless times that my customer service skills have helped with upset citizens. My experiences with the nursing home have permitted me to understand elderly cases better. My time as an advocate with WASAC has allowed me to explain the process of a sexual assault exam more clearly to a rape victim, for example. I have accepted all these previous job experiences, helped shape the person I am today, and helped mold me into the best human advocate combined with detective I could be. After testing and nervously waiting for what seemed like an eternity, I was notified they were going to give me a shot for the detective position. Fully aware of my infant-level police experience, they felt with my life experiences, age, education, devotion, and passion, I could do the job, and well. I usually joke that they just needed a woman in investigations. My first day as police detective was January 4th, 2015. I am grateful every day that I took that chance and that they took a chance on me. I hope I have made proud those that selected me. So, what is this experience like for me? Here's where I get ready to lose it, just warning you. Most days it's challenging. I don't often make note of the gender differences, although they are there. Some days it's more apparent. Cases involving children, domestic violence, and sex often illustrate the different ways my gender and theirs process, function, and manage it all. I cannot speak for them, but I personally have very little emotional distancing. I feel what they say. I feel what they feel, to some degree. I feel as a mother, sister, wife, daughter, friend. I think of the situation as if it were my own loved one. I am honest and try to be realistic, but I also continue to be hopeful. I have tried to do this differently, but it doesn't feel right for me. What this means is my future holding this position and doing this type of job may not be as long as I originally hoped. I am tired and sad and worn out to what humans do to one another. Often under the name of love, lust, anger, or beliefs. Sometimes and often out of their own personal interest. It is frustrating and some days overwhelming, but I press forward. I've been told I'm needed here and that I do a good job, and occasionally I see it or hear it from a victim or a victim's family, and for that moment, all seems right in the world and justice is happening. Being a woman in this position is also an honor. I can help change the face of policing, expectations for little girls and boys, for grown-ups, for society. It is a privilege and I treasure the opportunity. In 2017, female officers made up only 12.5% of law enforcement officers, and male officers made up 87.5%. Currently, our department is back to only 2 females. There's a big weight to carry the position of officer for either gender, but I feel the importance of it as a female every time I interact with the public. How has this job affected my family? You could ask her, just let her speak. I think I've been told, stop interrogating me. Mostly from my husband. I can't help it. I was trained to interview tough subjects and suspects to get the truth. Sometimes those tools come out in my daily life unexpectedly. My daughter has often said, "Mom, stop being a cop and just be a mom," when I would ask 20 questions about what she was doing or where she was going. I think all the moms in the room can agree that's just being a mom. I may or may not have more tools than some of you, though. More importantly, I think my kids and husband and closest friends can see that I'm not the same person I was when my fresh original mission was to save the world, while I carried my sword of virtue and wore my rose-colored glasses. I have seen the darkest of hours and held the hands of the most broken and anguished. I have looked into the sorrowful eyes of victims and their families and have been unable to fix it. As most cops, I sit facing the door whenever possible. I look for exits and possible weapons if needed. I don't trust a lot of people and I don't relax very easily. I definitely have troubles with crowds. This one's okay. But in public, it gives me apprehension. But I also appreciate the little things even more than before. I appreciate kindness as if it were complimentary gold. It is more priceless than gold. I also try my damnedest to stay positive, one curse word. For those around me, for my loved ones, for my friends, and for my victims and their families. I try to be a good example for my children on persevering with strength and grace, but with the real rawness that comes with being an honest human. It is sometimes dark. I am sometimes so tired and so weak, but I find my footing and my strength and my hope, and I take another step again. This leaves me with one final story. On May 30th, 2019, Mike and I celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. We were able to have a lovely honeymoon in Maui after we wed, but we have not been able to travel much following. We would do our best to take the kids on many vacations when we could afford it, such as Hutchinson, Canada. She just learned that recently. It's just Hutchinson, Kansas, but we'd hit the road for a weekend getaway and who knows where Midwest. 10 years being married with a whole lot of stress, we discussed celebrating this year proper, a real vacation. Mike tells me as the perfect plan, one that will get us away from the weight of the real world, unplug, and one with nature. He says I should join him and his friends on their 2019 portion of their backpack through the Appalachian Trail. Mike, an Army buddy, and his friend started the trail the year before. Their intention is to complete the 2,190 miles within the next 20 years. They did 37 miles in approximately 2 days in 2018. His body was broken and beaten upon his return, and I remember him detailing how brutal it was. I reminded him of this when he invited me to this year's hike. I've only day hiked at Canopolis Lake, and that was with a tiny backpack with one lunch. He assures me that it's tough, but he believes in me, thinks it'll be good for us, and it would be good for our minds to be in nature and away from our lives. Besides, he tells me, there's supposed to be 2 other females going as well, and they're in the same genre as you. I get put into a group chat that discusses hiking prep, packing, training, weather accommodations, warnings, issues, etc. We intend to drop off the vehicle right at the North Carolina border, get a ride into Georgia at Woody Gap, where they left off last year. I start telling people I'm going on this hike and joke that if I'm not physically ready for a 6-day hike over 53 miles, I will just drop the guys off on the trail and I will head to Myrtle Beach, picking them up later. There are moments I wish I would have. When it's finally time to go, June 14th, it's going to be the 3 guys and me. We intend to be done by June 20th and fly home by the 22nd. I had not been strenuously training like I should have, although I was doing little things like being active and changing my diet. Mike had annual training with the Army for 13 days prior to our departure, so we stressfully packed the morning of. We did not get to weigh anything and quickly stuffed the suitcases for travel. We meet up with the guys in Georgia who were nice and funny, and I was excited for this new adventure. I even brought my Nikon DSLR, hoping to spend my eye behind the camera for much of my trip, the other just taking it in mentally. When our driver, the Big Lebowski, dropped us off at our starting point, we decided to walk in approximately 1.5 miles before camping for the first night. This was my first experience hiking at night, but it was fairly leisurely and a comfortable pace. My backpack was approximately 35 to 40 pounds to begin. I thought, however, this is going to be good, challenging, but rejuvenating. We get to our first camp for the night, about 30 feet off the trail, to avoid the dangerous night-wandering human. Mike helps me set up my hammock, and we call it a night. We wake up the next morning, brush teeth, cook coffee, and eat a rehydrated bag of biscuits and gravy, facing a beautiful mountain overlook. The view is overwhelmingly beautiful, and there are no obvious signs of civilization other than other hikers. We start out walking, alternating leads every 20 minutes. It is clear right away the others' paces are swifter and more offensive than my own. We've already been warned by our leader that if we get hurt or cannot make it, we will be walked to the nearest gap and sent off with well wishes with an Uber, as they, the others, intend to finish this hike. Turns out the hike is roughly 67 miles. This may not seem like much more than a measly 14 more miles, no biggie for some, but that is a whole day for normal people. A rough whole day. I quickly see this is not a leisurely hike. This is backpacking, and it is intense. This is basic training. This is the most physically enduring thing I have ever endured or attempted. We slept in hammocks, hiked in the rain and heat, procured and cleaned water, and ate food out of a bag. I am injured early on, blistered feet and toes from going down mountains, a sciatic nerve bundle, and sore knees. Going up the mountains feel like someone's squeezing my lungs, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Going down the mountains feel like someone's taking a tiny hammer to my toes and my right knee. We hurried. Food was dehydrated, and because of the vigorous nature of the hike, I burned through calories like fire on a dry rope. They gave me the trail name of the Sarlacc. Star Wars fans will know this is the sandpit monster that Jabba the Hutt feeds his enemies to. I was bottomless, always looking for the next snack. The guys seemed to be understanding, but adamant about completing the mission. There was a lot of mental pressure, you know, do you have the grit to make it? If you don't, then what are you even doing? No one said those words, but I heard them. My husband and I bickered a lot. I was hurt, he was frustrated he couldn't fix it, and that he brought me here. I said, don't worry, darling. You'll find me a beach vacation, won't you? We made it through the toughest part of the trail, Blood Mountain, within the first couple of days. We ran into people, other hikers, and they were like, well, what do you think? This is your first hike? And I'm like, yeah, it's my first hike. And they'd look at him. You brought her on her first hike to Blood Mountain? Yes, we're still married. lovingly still married too. Once you're injured though, you continue to be injured. I was tired and sore and frustrated. I wanted to quit, and I considered it seriously about 4 times. On the last day, June 20th, we were under a lot of pressure to make up time. Breaks were even more limited. Mike and I were behind the other 2. I had a lot on my mind, not just completing or conceding, I was still deciding, but one of my biggest cases was in court. Roger Smith's sentencing hearing for the homicide of Sandra Berry was to be held that day. I had not missed any prior hearings, but my chief and lieutenant were there in my stead, and the family understood. I asked everyone to keep me posted and let me know as soon as possible. I responded to this call on August 1st, 2016, and I worked adamantly and diligently to put the case together and bring to the court for some form of justice for this victim and her family. I was out of my head on that mountain, thinking of Sandy and her family that day. At approximately 2:40 that afternoon, I received word that the judge sentenced Smith to 186 months for voluntary manslaughter. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, and I wept. Of all the cases I have worked and all the work I have put in, none have been so critical and time intense as this one. I would think of Sandy the rest of the hike and remind myself this was for her. I would pray for strength to continue, to let my body continue. I would weep and curse and pray. And finally, at 10:40 that night, I would take my last step off the mountain. The joy, pride, and elation would overwhelm me, taking my breath and catching in my throat. I dropped my bag and took off my boots, vowing to never do that again. I felt this physical tribulation was a comparison to my biggest case, and both were concluded on the same day. I felt the same relief as birthing a child. That seems dramatic to some, but I do not exaggerate when I say this was grueling. It was dangerous. It was physically painful. It was mentally challenging, and I did it. I made it. At times I did not believe it, but I kept taking a step, one at a time, 1 inch at a time for some of it, and Mike was with me, believing it would be okay, and even if it wasn't, we would get through it together. I don't regret the hike. In fact, I'd like to do it again at a more leisurely pace and a different camera as well. I am going to lose both my big toenails, and I have knee injuries I'm dealing with, but I grew a lot in my soul from that hike. I felt my own grit, my own pain, my own emotion. I drew on it and I kept going. This hike represented my current journey. I did not even know how important it was to see it from a different perspective and to feel it in this way. In a lot of ways it was cathartic, but I still have a lot of healing to go. However, I heal by helping others, so when I can, I do. And my hike will continue, 1 step at a time, and I will keep fighting to save the world, 1 inch at a time. Thank you for your time.